The crystal chandelier above my mother's dining table threw sharp fragments of light across the white tablecloth. I watched those reflections dance on the silverware while my mother announced she was selling my inheritance to buy my sister a house. Her voice was smooth, practiced, like she was reading the weather forecast instead of committing fraud. My name is Emma Harrington, and I was sitting at my parents' Thanksgiving table in their Bellevue McMansion, watching my family try to steal $80 million from me. The turkey was overcooked, the gravy was lumpy, and the betrayal was being served with the same casual indifference my mother used when she forgot my birthday. I set my wine glass down. The sound was louder than her announcement. My phone vibrated once against my thigh. Under the napkin, I glanced at the screen. Biometric authentication failed. Attempt 3/3. Dead man's switch activated. They had no idea that my grandfather's digital vault had just locked them out forever. They had no idea that in trying to forge my fingerprint, they had triggered the mechanism he had spent the last decade of his life building. They thought they were stealing my future. They had just handed it to me on a silver platter. "Interesting," I said, reaching for the mashed potatoes. My mother, Victoria Harrington, sat at the head of the table in a cream silk blouse that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She was 52 but spent thousands making sure she looked 40. Her hair was the kind of blonde that required maintenance every 3 weeks. She smiled at me, the smile she used for difficult clients and waiters who got her order wrong. "We know this is sudden, Emma," she said, "but Olivia and Marcus need to move quickly on the property. The market is so competitive right now. Your grandfather would have wanted family to help family." Across from me, my sister Olivia was glowing. She was 25, blonde like our mother, with the kind of effortless beauty that came from never having worried about anything in her life. She reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand. Marcus was 31, a financial advisor who wore expensive watches and smiled like a shark. "We found the perfect house in Medina," Olivia gushed. 5 bedrooms, water view, close to the good schools. "It's $2.7 million, but Marcus says it's an investment." My father, David Harrington, sat at the other end of the table. He was staring at his plate. He looked uncomfortable, like a man who knew he was part of something wrong but lacked the spine to stop it. He had been a banker before he retired. He knew exactly what they were doing. He just didn't have the courage to say no to Victoria. "The stock portfolio?" I said. My voice was calm, flat. "You want to liquidate Grandpa's tech holdings?" "Yes," Victoria said. She leaned forward, her tone shifting to patient explanation, as if I were a child who needed things spelled out. "The portfolio has done very well. It's sitting there doing nothing. We thought it made sense to use it for something meaningful. Olivia and Marcus are starting a family. They need stability." "Starting a family," I repeated. I looked at my sister. Her hand was resting on her still flat stomach. "Congratulations. When are you due?" "April," Olivia said. Her smile was radiant. "We wanted to wait to announce it, but with the house and everything, we decided to tell everyone today." I felt the phone vibrate again. Another notification. "Ownership transfer initiated. Margaret Chen notified." Margaret Chen was my grandfather's lawyer. She was 63, sharp as broken glass, and she had been waiting for this day for 3 years. Ever since my grandfather died and left me a smartwatch with a biometric lock and instructions written in his precise engineer's handwriting. "If they try to take it, Emma, let them try. The vault will do the rest." "That's wonderful," I said to Olivia. I picked up my fork. The green beans were cold. "You must be so excited." "We are," Marcus said. He had a voice like smooth whiskey, designed to sell things to people who didn't need them. "And we're grateful to the family for supporting us during this time. Victoria has been incredibly generous in helping us navigate the financial planning." I looked at my mother. She was good. She had positioned this as generosity instead of theft. She had wrapped the crime in the language of family values. "So how exactly does this work?" I asked. "Legally, I mean." Grandpa left the portfolio in a trust. I was under the impression that required all beneficiaries to consent to any liquidation. "That's already handled," Victoria said quickly. "Too quickly. Your father has power of attorney. We've been working with our estate lawyer. Everything is in order." "Everything except my biometric signature," I said. The table went quiet. My father looked up from his plate. Victoria's smile tightened at the corners. "I'm sorry, what?" Victoria asked. The vault, I said. I took a sip of wine. It was a mediocre Pinot Noir, the kind my mother bought because the label looked expensive. Grandpa's portfolio isn't in a standard brokerage account. It's in a digital vault with biometric authentication. It requires my fingerprint and retinal scan to authorize any transaction over $10,000. Didn't your estate lawyer mention that? Marcus shifted in his seat. I saw something flicker across his face. Not surprise. Recognition. He had known. And he had told them to try anyway. That's just a security feature, Victoria said. Her voice was still smooth, but there was an edge to it now. We have your old fingerprints on file from when you helped with the family business paperwork. The authentication is a formality. On file, I repeated. You mean you tried to forge my biometric signature using old records? Emma, don't be dramatic, Victoria snapped. We are trying to help your sister. How many times did you try? I asked. Once? Twice? 3 times, Marcus said. His voice was quiet. He was looking at me with a new expression. Calculation. He was reassessing. Victoria tried 3 times this morning. The system kept rejecting it. I leaned back in my chair. The phone was still vibrating. Messages were piling up. Margaret Chen was executing the protocols my grandfather had programmed into the trust 13 years ago, when I was 16 and he was teaching me to code in his cluttered home office in Fremont. Let me tell you what happened this morning, I said. My voice was still calm. I could feel the rage, cold and dense, sitting in the center of my chest. But I had learned from my grandfather, rage is fuel. Use it. Don't let it use you. At 6:15 a.m. Pacific time, someone using my mother's laptop accessed the Harrington Family Trust Management portal. At 6:23, that person attempted to authorize a liquidation order for 843,000 shares of Cascade Tech Industries. Current value, $82,400,000. The system requested biometric authentication. I paused. I looked at each of them. Olivia had gone pale. My father was staring at me like he had never seen me before. Victoria was very still. At 6:27, the system received a fingerprint scan. I continued. It did not match my biometric profile. At 6:31, a second attempt, also rejected. At 6:35, a third attempt, this time with an uploaded photo of my retina from my old driver's license, also rejected. How do you know all this? Victoria asked. Her voice was tight. Because the system sends me a notification every time someone tries to access the vault, I said. And because 3 failed authentication attempts trigger what my grandfather called the dead man's switch. Dead man's switch, my father repeated. His voice was hoarse. When someone tries to steal from the trust by forging my biometric signature, the system automatically does 3 things, I explained. First, it locks everyone else out permanently. Second, it transfers 100% ownership of all assets to me. And third, it freezes access to every other trust or account tied to Grandpa's estate, including, I looked at Victoria, the one that holds the deed to this house. My mother stood up, her chair scraped against the hardwood. You're lying. I pulled my phone out from under the napkin. I turned the screen toward them. The notification banner glowed in the dim light. Dead man's switch activated. Full ownership transferred to Emma J. Harrington, all secondary accounts, frozen pending audit. I'm not lying, I said. I'm just telling you what Grandpa programmed to happen if you ever tried to cut me out. Olivia started crying. Not the pretty, delicate crying she did when she wanted sympathy. Real crying, the kind that came with panic. Marcus put his arm around her, but he was staring at the phone. He was doing the math. He was realizing that the house in Medina was gone. The future he had been building was built on a foundation that had just turned to sand. This is insane, Victoria said. She was pacing now, her heels clicking on the floor. You cannot possibly enforce this. We'll sue. We'll take this to court. Your grandfather was senile when he set this up. He was 68 and sharper than you'll ever be, I said. And before you call your lawyer, you should know that Margaret Chen has already filed the automatic audit paperwork with the probate court. Every transaction you've made using Grandpa's accounts for the last 10 years is now subject to forensic review. My father made a small sound. It might have been a gasp. It might have been a sob. I stood up. I picked up my bag. The Thanksgiving dinner was ruined, but I had never liked turkey anyway. "Where are you going?" Victoria demanded. "Home," I said. "I have a meeting with Margaret tomorrow morning to sign the final ownership transfer. You should probably spend tonight calling lawyers instead of real estate agents." "Emma, please," my father said. He finally found his voice. "We can talk about this. We can work something out." I looked at him. For 30 years, he had been my father in name only. He had been Victoria's yes man, the soft voice that encouraged me to be reasonable when my mother was being cruel. He had taught me to balance a checkbook, but never to stand up for myself. He had let Olivia be the favorite because it was easier than fighting. "You had 30 years to talk to me," I said. "You chose Thanksgiving dinner to announce fraud instead." I walked out of the dining room. I walked through the foyer with its ridiculous crystal chandelier that cost more than my first car. I walked out the front door into the cool November night. My car was parked at the end of the long driveway. It was a practical Honda, gray and invisible. I got in and closed the door. The silence was different from the silence in their house. It was mine. It was safe. I didn't start the engine immediately. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, feeling the 30 years of being the backup daughter drain out of me like poison from a wound. My phone rang. "Margaret Chen," I answered. "Hello, Margaret." "Emma." Her voice was crisp, efficient, colored with a hint of satisfaction. "The dead man's switch executed perfectly. I have the full transfer documentation ready for your signature. Can you come to the office at 9 a.m.? "I'll be there," I said. "Good," Margaret said. "And Emma, your grandfather would be very proud of you." I hung up. I sat in the dark car, watching the lights from my parents' house spill across the lawn. I thought about my grandfather, Raymond Harrington, who had died 3 years ago of a heart attack in his sleep. He had been a software engineer in the early days of Microsoft. He had taken his stock options and invested them in a dozen tech startups that everyone said would fail. Most of them did fail, but 2 of them became Cascade Tech Industries, and another became part of what would eventually be absorbed into Amazon. He had watched his son, my father, marry Victoria and slowly lose his spine. He had watched Victoria favor Olivia because Olivia was easy and pretty and did what she was told. He had watched me be the useful one, the one who fixed things, the one who never complained. 2 weeks before he died, he called me to his office. He was thin by then, his hands shaking slightly, but his mind was sharp. He handed me a small box. Inside was a smartwatch. It looked ordinary, but when I turned it over, there was an engraving. "For Emma, who sees clearly, build something real. This is paired to the trust vault," he said. His voice was quiet. "Wear it when they try to take what's yours, and they will try. Emma, the watch will know. It tracks your biometric signature. It's the only key that works. If someone tries to forge it, the system burns their access and gives you everything." "Why?" I had asked. "Why go through all this?" "Because you're the only one who understands that money is a tool, not an identity," he said. "Victoria thinks money is status. David thinks money is peace. Olivia thinks money is magic. But you, Emma, you know money is just concentrated time and freedom. You'll use it right." I had worn the watch every day since. I never took it off. It tracked my sleep, my steps, my heartbeat. It also tracked every time someone tried to access the vault without me. Victoria had tried to fake my fingerprint 3 times this morning. She had used old prints from paperwork, from wine glasses I had touched at family dinners. She had probably paid someone to lift them, to create a synthetic match. It hadn't worked. The watch knew my living biometric signature. It knew the heat of my skin, the unique pattern of my actual fingerprint pressed against a scanner in real time. She had triggered the switch, just like Grandpa had known she would. I started the car. I pulled out of the driveway. I drove back to my apartment in Capitol Hill, a small 1-bedroom with a view of the Space Needle. It was mine. I had bought it with my salary, not with family money. Everything in it, I had chosen. Everything in it, I had earned. I made tea. I sat on my couch with my laptop. I opened my email. Margaret had already sent the preliminary documents. I read through them, page by page. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear. As of 6:36 a.m. this morning, I was the sole owner of the Raymond Harrington Irrevocable Trust. The trust contained $82 million in stock, a commercial property in Ballard, that generated rental income, and 2 smaller investment accounts. It also contained something I hadn't known about until Margaret's email. The trust held the mortgage on my parents' house. My grandfather had bought the house for them 23 years ago. He had structured it as a loan through the trust. On paper, my parents were supposed to pay it back. They never had. They had lived there rent-free, paying only taxes and maintenance, because Grandpa had never enforced the loan terms. But the loan documents were real, and now I held the note. The house was worth $3.2 million. They owed $2.1 million. I could call the loan. I could force a sale. I could make them homeless. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window. Seattle glowed below me, all glass and steel and ambition. I had grown up in this city. I had watched the tech boom transform it from a sleepy port town into a hyper-competitive arena. I had learned to code here, to think in systems and loops and conditional logic. If they try to steal, then they lose everything. That was the logic Grandpa had programmed into the trust. Simple, brutal, effective. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Emma, please call me. We need to talk. Your mother is hysterical. This is destroying the family." I didn't reply. I turned off my phone. I went to bed. I slept better than I had in years. The law offices of Chen and Associates occupied the 14th floor of a glass tower downtown. I arrived at 8:55, wearing a charcoal suit and my grandfather's watch. Margaret's assistant showed me into a corner conference room. The view looked out over Elliott Bay. The ferries were crossing, white against the gray water. Margaret was already there, sitting at the head of the table. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she had the presence of someone much larger. Her hair was cut short and silver. She wore a black suit and jade earrings. She stood when I entered. "Emma," she said. She shook my hand. Her grip was firm. "Sit. We have a great deal to cover." I sat. Margaret opened a thick binder. "First," she said, "congratulations. You are now the beneficial owner of assets valued at approximately $82.6 million. The stock portfolio represents $82 million. The Ballard property generates $73,000 per year in net rental income. The smaller accounts total $518,000. I nodded. I had read the documents, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. "Second," Margaret continued, "we need to discuss the mortgage situation. Your parents' residence is held under a trust loan. They are currently in default, as they have not made a payment in 23 years. You have 3 options. 1. You can forgive the loan and gift them the house. 2. You can continue the informal arrangement your grandfather had and let them live there without payment. 3. You can call the loan and force a sale. What would you recommend?" I asked. Margaret looked at me. Her eyes were dark, unreadable. "That depends on what you want, Emma. Do you want peace, or do you want justice?" I thought about last night. I thought about my mother's voice, smooth and casual, announcing she was stealing my future to buy my sister a house. I thought about Olivia's fake pregnancy, the lie designed to create urgency. I thought about Marcus, the financial advisor who had pushed this scheme, who had convinced my mother that forging my fingerprint was just a formality. "Justice," I said. Margaret smiled. It was a small, sharp smile. "Good. Then here is what I suggest. We call the loan. We give them 30 days to refinance or sell. The current market will allow them to clear the debt and walk away with approximately $1 million in equity. It's not the $3 million they thought they had, but it's more than they deserve." "And the trust?" I asked. "Will they contest it?" "They cannot contest what they triggered themselves," Margaret said. She slid a document across the table. "This is the audit report. I had a forensic accountant review the last decade of transactions. Your mother has been drawing from the trust at a rate of $12,000 per month for personal expenses. Your father signed off on it. Technically, this is embezzlement. Your grandfather allowed it because he valued family peace, but he documented everything." She paused. "If they try to sue you for the trust, we release the audit. They will be exposed not just as thieves, but as stupid thieves. No lawyer will take their case." "What about Olivia?" I asked. Margaret pulled out another file. "Your sister has received approximately $400,000 over the last 5 years. Tuition, car payments, credit card debt, the deposit on her last apartment, all charged to the trust. all signed off by your mother. Olivia may not have known the full scope, but she benefited from the theft. I felt cold. I had suspected I was the backup child, but seeing the numbers made it real. They had spent $500,000 on Olivia's lifestyle, while I had paid my own student loans. However, Margaret said, her voice softening slightly, Olivia is also a victim in this. Marcus has been manipulating her. I pulled his financials. He has $300,000 in personal debt, credit cards, a failed business venture, gambling. He needs this house purchase to work because he's planning to use the equity to cover his losses. The pregnancy? I asked. Margaret's mouth tightened. I cannot confirm, but the timeline is suspicious. Olivia announced it the same day Victoria tried to liquidate the stock. It's possible Marcus convinced her to lie to create urgency. I sat back. The rage I had felt last night was transmuting into something colder, heavier, responsibility. What do you need me to do? I asked. Margaret slid a stack of papers toward me. 3 signatures. First, the final transfer of ownership. This makes you the legal owner of record for all trust assets. Second, the loan default notice. This gives your parents 30 days. Third, she paused. This is optional. It's a settlement offer. I looked at the third document. It was addressed to Olivia Harrington. What is this? I asked. An education trust, Margaret said. If Olivia agrees to end her relationship with Marcus and to testify honestly about his role in this scheme, you will establish a trust fund for her with $200,000. It will pay for legitimate education or career development. It cannot be accessed for cars, vacations, or debt payment. Why would I do that? I asked. Because your grandfather left notes, Margaret said quietly. She pulled out a leather journal. Raymond had been keeping records, Emma. He wrote about each of you. She opened to a marked page. I'll read what he wrote about Olivia. She cleared her throat. Olivia is soft. She has been shaped by Victoria into something decorative rather than functional. But she is young. If Emma can separate her from the parasites, Olivia might still learn to build something real. Do not punish her for being weak. Give her one chance to become strong. I felt my throat tighten. Grandpa had seen all of it. He had watched the dynamics, documented the theft, and still, he had tried to leave room for redemption. And me? I asked. What did he write about me? Margaret turned to another page. She did not hand me the journal. She just read, Emma is steel, wrapped in silence. She will inherit everything because she is the only one who will not waste it. She thinks I am leaving her money. I am leaving her the tools to build the world she deserves. She will be lonely at first, but she will not be alone. I blinked. I would not cry in this conference room. I had done all my crying 3 years ago when Grandpa died. I signed the documents. All 3 of them. Margaret gathered them efficiently. I will have these filed by end of business today. The default notice will be served tomorrow. The settlement offer will be delivered to Olivia separately, by courier. What happens now? I asked. Now, Margaret said. You wait. They will panic. They will call you. They will beg. You must decide how much mercy you are willing to extend. I thought about it. I thought about 30 years of being the reliable one, the one who fixed things, the one who never complained because complaining made me seem difficult. I'm done fixing their problems, I said. Margaret nodded. Good. Then let the consequences teach them what you could not. I left the office. I went back to work. I was a security analyst for a mid-sized firm downtown. I spent my days finding vulnerabilities in systems, patching holes before they could be exploited. It was satisfying work. Quiet. Precise. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. My father. I let it ring. At 4 p.m., a text from Olivia. Emma, please. Mom is freaking out. She's saying you're going to make us homeless. This isn't fair. I'm pregnant. I didn't reply. At 5 p.m., a voicemail from Victoria. Her voice was tight, controlled. Emma, this is childish. We need to discuss this like adults. Call me back immediately. I deleted it. At 6 p.m., my apartment buzzer rang. I checked the security camera. Marcus was standing in the lobby. He was alone. He was smiling at the camera, the kind of smile that was designed to charm. I didn't buzz him up. At 7 p.m., Margaret called. They hired a lawyer, she said. Bradley Simmons. He's a bulldog. He sent a letter threatening to sue for elder abuse, claiming Raymond was not of sound mind when he created the trust structure. Can they win? I asked. No, Margaret said flatly. I have Raymond's medical records. I have video of him explaining the trust setup. I have documentation spanning 13 years, showing consistent, rational decision-making. Simmons is grasping at straws, but he'll make noise. Let him, I said. The first week was noise. Letters from the lawyer. Phone calls I didn't answer. My mother showed up at my office. Security escorted her out. She screamed in the lobby that I was ungrateful, that I was destroying the family, that Grandpa would be ashamed. The second week was quieter. The lawyer stopped sending letters. Margaret told me they had tried to refinance the house, but no bank would give them a loan. Victoria's income was from trust distributions that were now frozen. David's pension wasn't enough. They had no collateral. They were financially radioactive. The third week, Olivia came to my apartment. She came alone, without Marcus. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were red. I buzzed her up. She sat on my couch, staring at her hands. I'm sorry, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. For what? I asked. For all of it, she said. For being the favorite, for taking the money, for not asking where it came from. She looked up at me. Emma, I didn't know Marcus was in debt. I didn't know Mom was forging your fingerprint. I thought it was just family money. The pregnancy? I said. Is it real? She shook her head. Tears spilled down her cheeks. No, Marcus said we needed to announce it to make Mom move faster. He said it was just timing, that we'd really start trying after the house closed. He said it was strategic. I sat down next to her. I didn't touch her. I just sat. Where is he now? I asked. Gone, Olivia said. When the house deal fell through, when he realized there was no money, he left. He said I was a disappointment. He said I couldn't even manage my own family. Good, I said. Olivia looked at me, surprised. He was using you, I said. He saw you as access to money. Now that the money's gone, so is he. You're better off. She wiped her eyes. Margaret sent me a paper. About a trust, for education. I nodded. Why? Olivia asked. After everything, why would you do that? Because Grandpa asked me to, I said. And because you're 25. You're still young enough to learn. Learn what? That money doesn't love you back, I said. That the people who stay when you have nothing are the only ones who matter. She was quiet for a long moment. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Did you ever hate me? For being the favorite? I thought about it. I thought about the birthdays where she got a car and I got a laptop, the Christmases where her stocking overflowed and mine held practical gifts, the dinners where Mom bragged about Olivia's Instagram following and forgot to ask about my promotion. No, I said. I didn't hate you. I pitied you. Why? Because you were loved conditionally, I said. You were loved for being pretty and easy and compliant. I was ignored, but that meant I was free. I got to become myself. You got to become what they wanted. Olivia stared at me. Then she started crying again. Harder this time. Not panic crying. Grief crying. I put my arm around her. She leaned into me. What do I do now? She asked. You build something real, I said. You take the education trust. You go back to school. You learn to do something that doesn't require you to be decorative. She nodded against my shoulder. The settlement was finalized in the 4th week. My parents sold the house. After paying off the trust loan, they walked away with $1.1 million. Margaret helped them find a condo in Renton, a suburb 30 minutes south. It was nice enough. 2 bedrooms. A view of a parking lot instead of the lake. Victoria didn't speak to me. She communicated only through her lawyer. The final settlement included a non-disclosure agreement. She could never speak publicly about the trust, the transfer, or me. In exchange, I wouldn't release the audit showing her embezzlement. David called me once. His voice was tired. Emma, I'm sorry, he said. I should have stopped her. I should have protected you. Yes, I said. You should have. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. I thought about 30 years of him choosing the easy path, the quiet path, the path that let Victoria burn everything down while he watched. No, I said, but I can let you go. He hung up. Olivia took the settlement. She enrolled at UW for a degree in social work. She moved into a studio apartment in the university district. She got a job at a bookstore. She started going to therapy. We had coffee once a month. We didn't talk about the family. We talked about her classes, her work, the books she was reading. Slowly, over months, I watched her become someone real. The stock portfolio hit a major milestone 6 months after the transfer. Cascade Tech Industries announced an IPO. The value of my shares quintupled overnight. I woke up one morning worth $400 million. I sat in my apartment, drinking coffee, watching the news coverage on my laptop. I felt nothing. Not joy, not fear, just a quiet acknowledgement that Grandpa had been right. He had given me tools, and I had used them correctly. I called Margaret. "I want to set up a foundation," I said. "What kind?" she asked. "For women who have been systematically dispossessed," I said. "Women who were gaslit by their families, told they were difficult, told they didn't need help because they were competent. I want to fund lawyers. I want to fund forensic accountants. I want to fund escape routes." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Raymond would love that," she said. "I know," I said. 1 year after Thanksgiving, I received a letter. It was from my mother, delivered through her lawyer. It was 2 pages, typed, formal. She detailed her financial struggles. She explained that the condo was fine but not what she was used to. She asked if I would consider reinstating a small monthly allowance. I read it twice. Then I filed it in a folder labeled "No." I didn't reply. 2 years after, Olivia graduated with her degree. I went to the ceremony. I sat in the back. When they called her name, I clapped. She saw me in the crowd. She smiled. Afterward, we had dinner. Just the 2 of us. "Thank you," she said. "For the trust. For the chance. You earned it," I said. "Did I?" she asked. "I was part of the problem, Emma. I took the money. I didn't ask questions." "You were 25, I said. "Now you're 27. You're learning. That's what matters." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you're my sister," she said. I squeezed back. "Me too." 3 years after, I stood in the boardroom of the Harrington Foundation. The walls were glass. The view was the city I had grown up in, transformed and transforming still. Around the table sat 12 women, lawyers, accountants, investigators. We were reviewing cases, women who needed help, women who needed tools. Margaret sat at my right hand. She was 70 now, still sharp, still fierce. "This one," she said, pointing to a file. "Daughter cut out of inheritance by stepmother. Father's new wife forged documents. There's a digital trail. Fund it," I said. "Full forensic audit. Best lawyers." We went through 15 more cases. At the end, Margaret closed her folder. "You know," she said, "Raymond used to say you were the only one who understood that money is just time and freedom." "I remember," I said. "You proved him right," Margaret said. "You didn't waste it on houses or cars. You turned it into more time and freedom for others." I looked out at the city. It was raining, the kind of soft Seattle rain that felt like a promise that winter would end. "I'm not the backup daughter anymore," I said. "No," Margaret said. "You're the owner. And the silence doesn't feel empty. It feels like peace." I turned from the window. I picked up my bag. The smartwatch on my wrist, my grandfather's watch, tracked my heartbeat, steady and strong. "Interesting," I said to the empty boardroom. Then I walked out into the future I had built.